My name is Emily Carter. I am 34 years old. And at my grandmother's will reading, my mother smiled when the lawyer said I had inherited exactly $1. My brother Ryan laughed first, not loudly at the beginning, just a short breath through his nose like he'd been holding it in for years and finally got permission to release it. Then his wife Melissa leaned back in her leather chair, crossed one beige heel over the other, and whispered, "Well, that explains what 5 years of free rent was worth." The conference room went still. Outside the glass wall of Grayson and Bell law offices, downtown Columbus looked washed gray under late April rain. Cars hissed along Broad Street. Somewhere behind me, the receptionist's printer clicked and hummed. I stared at the polished table, at the single white envelope with my name typed across it. Emily Carter. $1. 5 years of bathing my grandmother. 5 years of crushing pills into applesauce. 5 years of sleeping with a baby monitor beside my pillow, waking every time her breathing changed. And my mother was smiling. "Mom," I said quietly. She didn't look ashamed. She adjusted the pearl bracelet on her wrist and gave me the soft, disappointed face she used whenever she wanted cruelty to look like wisdom. "Emily," she said, "your grandmother knew what she was doing." Ryan tapped 2 fingers on the table. "Honestly, Em, I'm surprised she left you anything, after how controlling you got near the end." That was the first wound. Not the $1. That I had expected some version of betrayal by then. The wound was hearing him call 5 years of staying control. 5 years earlier, on a Tuesday morning in March, I had been standing behind the counter at Petwell Animal Clinic, holding a sedated golden retriever's paw while Dr. Anita Shaw removed a cracked dew claw. My phone buzzed against my hip 3 times before I could check it. Mom. Mom. Ryan. Then a text from Ryan. Grandma fell. Hospital. Stroke maybe. Come now. Riverside Methodist smelled like bleach, coffee, and old fear. My grandmother, Margaret Wells, lay in room 418 with the left side of her face slack and one hand curled against her chest like it had forgotten how to open. She was 79. Before that day, she still drove herself to Kroger, still wore lipstick to the mailbox, still corrected cashiers if they gave her the wrong change. Now she stared at us with one terrified blue eye, while a neurologist explained words that made my mother fold into a chair. Hemorrhagic stroke, mobility loss, cognitive fluctuations, full-time care. Skilled nursing could run $9,000 to $11,000 a month, the social worker said, flipping a laminated packet open on her clipboard, depending on placement and insurance coverage. Ryan looked down at his phone immediately. My mother whispered, "We can't afford that." No one looked at me at first. That came later, in the hallway, near the vending machines, while rain tapped against the narrow hospital window. Mom touched my sleeve. "You're the only one who makes sense," she said. I remember the exact pattern of her nails. Pale pink, glossy, one tiny chip on the thumb. "I have a job," I said. "You work with animals," Ryan said, like that made me already halfway trained to become a nurse, a maid, and a daughter no one had to pay. "I'm a veterinary technician." "Right," he said. "Care work." His wife Melissa wasn't there yet, but her voice arrived through his mouth. "Besides," Mom added carefully, "Ryan has the kids. I still have my office. You're single, honey. You have flexibility." Flexibility. That was the word they used before they took my life apart. Grandma tried to speak from the hospital bed that evening. The words came out broken, wet at the edges, but I understood enough. Don't Lose yourself. I squeezed her hand. I won't, I lied. 3 days later, we met at a Panera in Westerville, because Mom said hospitals made her anxious, and Ryan said he didn't want to talk numbers around Grandma. He wore a navy quarter zip and kept checking his Apple Watch. Melissa sat beside him in a cream sweater, stirring iced coffee she barely drank. Mom brought a yellow legal pad. At the top, she wrote, Grandma Care Plan. Underneath, Emily equals primary caregiver. No salary, no schedule, no legal agreement. Just my name with an equal sign beside it, like I was an answer already solved. What about compensation? I asked. Ryan leaned forward. You'll be living in her house rent-free. The house needs work, I said. It's still worth at least $380, Mom said. Maybe more now. And Margaret always said she wanted you to have something special. She said that? Mom looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at his coffee. Melissa smiled gently. Emily, no one is trying to cheat you. This is family. That was the second wound. When people say, this is family, what they often mean is, don't protect yourself. I gave notice at Petwell 2 weeks later. Dr. Shaw didn't try to stop me. She just removed her glasses, rubbed the bridge of her nose, and asked, did they put anything in writing? I laughed because the question felt insulting then. No, I said. They're my family. She didn't laugh with me. On April 6th, 2019, I moved into Grandma's ranch house on Linden Avenue. Yellow siding, white shutters, a cracked driveway with weeds pushing through the seams. The guest room smelled like cedar, dust, and old Avon powder. I brought 2 suitcases, my framed license, and a gray cat named Juniper who hid under the bed for 3 days. That first night, Grandma woke up at 2:41 a.m. shouting for my grandfather, who had been dead since 2011. I ran barefoot down the hall, heart slamming. The baby monitor glowed green on my nightstand behind me. It's Emily, I said, kneeling beside her bed. You're home. You're safe. She blinked at me, ashamed before she was fully awake. I hate this, she whispered. I brushed her hair back from her damp forehead. I know. No, she said, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. You don't yet. She was right. I didn't. Not yet. I didn't know what it felt like to wash another adult's body while pretending not to notice their humiliation. I didn't know the exact sound of a pill crusher at 7 a.m. I didn't know how heavy silence could feel in a house where someone was alive but disappearing. I learned. By June, I knew which pharmacy tech at CVS would refill her blood pressure medication without making me repeat the insurance number 3 times. I knew Grandma liked her oatmeal thinner on rainy mornings. I knew she pretended not to cry when I clipped her nails. I knew Mom called every Sunday at 6:15 p.m., usually while unloading groceries, because I could hear plastic bags rustling in the background. How's she doing? She would ask. Not, how are you doing? Never that. Ryan visited the first month with the kids. They stayed 26 minutes. His son spilled orange Gatorade on Grandma's beige recliner, and Melissa laughed like it was charming. Memories, she said. After they left, I scrubbed the stain for 19 minutes while Grandma watched from her wheelchair. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For making them show you who they are. I told her she was tired. I told myself the same thing. By September, my savings account had dropped below $4,000. I bought adult briefs in bulk from Costco and pretended not to notice when the cashier looked at the cart, then at me, then away. I learned to order waterproof bed pads online at midnight. I learned that pressure sores could bloom red and angry no matter how carefully you turned someone. I made a chart on the fridge. Medication, 7 a.m., 1 p.m., 8 p.m. Blood pressure, morning and night. Physical therapy, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Skin check, daily. Mom came over once in October with a pumpkin pie from Whole Foods. She set it on the counter, kissed Grandma's forehead, and walked room to room like a realtor. "The house feels smaller than I remember," she said. Grandma's eyes followed her. "It's big enough for the person who stays," Grandma replied. Mom pretended not to hear. At Thanksgiving that year, everyone came. I cooked for 2 days. Turkey, sweet potatoes, green beans, stuffing from Grandma's handwritten recipe card with butter stains in the corner. I set the table with her blue floral plates. I even ironed napkins because she always had. Ryan arrived late, carrying a bottle of wine he opened for himself. Melissa posted a photo before dinner. "Family is everything. So thankful for Grandma Margaret." She tagged everyone except me. During dessert, Grandma said, "Emily made all this." Ryan nodded without looking up from his phone. "Yeah, it's great." Melissa smiled. "She's always been domestic." Domestic. I was 29 years old. I had once assisted in emergency surgeries, placed IV catheters, monitored anesthesia, calmed terrified animals with my hands steady and my voice low. Now I was domestic. After they left, I stood alone in the kitchen, scraping hardened gravy from the roasting pan. My lower back throbbed. My hair smelled like onions and dish soap. Grandma rolled her wheelchair into the doorway. "Leave it," she said. "I can't." "Yes, you can." But I couldn't. That was the problem. They all knew I couldn't, and they built their whole lives around it. January 2020 arrived with freezing rain, dead grass, and the slow realization that nobody was coming to save me. The excitement people pretend to have during a crisis had worn off by then. No more, "You're amazing for doing this." No more, "Tell Margaret we love her." No more casserole dishes left on the porch. Real caregiving begins after everybody else gets bored. That was when the loneliness started turning physical. It settled into my shoulders first, then my jaw, then my chest. Grandma's condition stabilized enough that she wasn't dying anymore, but not enough that she could live independently, which meant the emergency had become permanent. And permanent things scare people, especially selfish people. One Thursday morning, I found Mom sitting at Grandma's kitchen table with paperwork spread out in front of her. Property tax statements, insurance forms, a Zillow printout. Snow fell softly outside the window over Linden Avenue. Grandma was asleep in the living room recliner with a heated blanket over her knees, mouth slightly open, daytime television flickering blue light across her face. "What's all this?" I asked. Mom stacked the papers too quickly. "Nothing." I reached for the Zillow sheet anyway. Estimated home value, $412,000. Something cold moved through me. "You're looking at selling the house?" Mom sighed dramatically like I was exhausting her. "Emily, nobody's selling anything right now." "Right now? We're discussing the future." "The future where Grandma is still alive?" Her lips tightened. "You don't understand how complicated finances become at her age." No. I understood perfectly. They had already started calculating what her death would be worth. That night, while helping Grandma change into her nightgown, she asked quietly, "Was Diane talking about the house again?" I froze. Grandma watched my face carefully in the bathroom mirror. "She thinks I don't hear things anymore," she said. "Stroke didn't make me stupid." I helped her sit carefully on the edge of the bed. "You should rest. She wants the house sold because Ryan's in debt." I looked up immediately. What? Grandma lowered her voice even though we were alone. Melissa spends money like someone lighting matches in a dry field. That image stayed with me. Lighting matches in a dry field. A week later, I understood exactly what she meant. Ryan arrived in a black BMW I had never seen before. Brand new. Temporary tags still taped to the rear window. He parked crooked in the driveway while I stood outside bringing in groceries. "Nice car," I said. He grinned immediately, proud. "M-Sport package." "How much was it?" "Lease." That wasn't my question. His smile faded a little. "Why are you acting weird?" Because I was carrying generic adult diapers bought with coupons while he drove a luxury car. Because my winter coat zipper was broken. Because I had started watering down soup broth to stretch groceries. Because nobody had paid me a single dollar. But I only said, "Nothing." Inside, Melissa kissed Grandma loudly on the cheek, then spent 10 straight minutes talking about kitchen renovations in their new house, while Grandma struggled to hold a spoon steady. People reveal themselves in tiny moments. Not giant speeches. Tiny moments. Grandma dropped her fork halfway through lunch. Melissa kept talking. Didn't pause once. I picked the fork up, cleaned it quietly, and placed it back into Grandma's trembling hand. Melissa never even noticed. That night, Grandma wrote something in the small blue notebook she kept hidden beside her recliner. At the time, I thought it was a journal. I didn't know she was building evidence. February brought COVID rumors. March brought panic. And suddenly the entire world became isolated enough to understand a fraction of what my life already looked like. Masks, gloves, disinfecting groceries, fear every time Grandma coughed. Mom stopped visiting almost completely after the lockdowns started. Ryan used the kids as an excuse. Melissa blamed exposure risks. But somehow they still went to restaurants, still posted beach photos, still attended backyard parties. I knew because social media became the closest thing I had to human interaction. One night in April 2020 at 1:13 a.m., Grandma had a panic episode. She woke up confused, convinced her dead husband was trapped outside in the snow. There wasn't any snow. It was 48 degrees and raining. But dementia doesn't care about weather. I spent 40 minutes kneeling beside her recliner while she cried into my shoulder. "Don't let him freeze," she kept whispering. My sweatshirt sleeve became wet with tears. After she finally fell asleep again, I sat alone in the kitchen eating dry cereal from the box because I was too tired to make anything else. The refrigerator hummed. Rain tapped softly against the sink window. My phone lit up with an Instagram notification. Melissa had posted photos from wine night with friends. Caption: "Quarantine is driving us crazy." I stared at the screen so long it dimmed in my hand. Something ugly bloomed inside me then. Not jealousy. Recognition. I was disappearing while everyone else kept living. May 2020. My 30th birthday. Nobody came over. Mom mailed a card with $20 inside. Ryan texted at 8:42 p.m. "HBD, M. Hope Grandma's behaving. LOL." That was it. Grandma forgot what day it was until nearly bedtime. When she realized, she cried harder than I did. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. 30 matters. I smiled and lied. "It's okay." "No," she said. "It isn't." She made me sit beside her on the couch while she struggled to open the side drawer of the end table. Inside was an envelope. $200 in 20s. "Grandma, Take it." "I can't." "Yes, you can. You haven't bought yourself anything in months." I almost refused. Then I remembered my sneakers had holes near the soles. I took the money, and that hurt more than refusing would have. The next morning, Mom called while I was helping Grandma shower. "I saw money missing from her account." I went cold instantly. "What?" "She withdrew cash last week. She gave me birthday money." Silence, then a slow exhale. "Emily, you need to be very careful how this looks." The room tilted. Grandma sat wrapped in towels beside me, shivering slightly from the shower steam cooling on her skin. "How what looks?" "You living there, taking money. People talk." People talk. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Do you need help?" People talk. I lowered my voice because Grandma was listening. "You think I'm stealing from her?" "I didn't say that." "You implied it." Mom's tone sharpened immediately. "You're getting awfully defensive." That was the moment something cracked permanently between us. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a tiny, clean break deep inside my chest. After the call ended, I sat on the closed toilet lid staring at the tile floor while Grandma watched me carefully. "She thinks you're using me," Grandma said softly. I swallowed hard. "She's stressed." "No," Grandma replied. "She's guilty." Summer arrived heavy and humid. The house air conditioner struggled constantly. Grandma's breathing worsened in the heat. I learned how to reposition oxygen tubing without waking her fully. Learned which pharmacy carried the only lotion that didn't irritate her skin. Learned how to sleep lightly enough that every strange sound pulled me awake instantly. I stopped feeling 30. I felt ancient. One evening in August, Ryan stopped by unexpectedly. Alone. No Melissa, no kids. He stood in the kitchen drinking bottled water while I prepared Grandma's evening medications. He watched me crush pills into pudding. "You know," he said casually, "Mom thinks you're getting too emotionally attached to this place." I kept stirring the medication slowly. "What does that mean?" "She thinks you assume the house is automatically yours." I laughed once. Not because it was funny, because I genuinely couldn't believe the conversation. "I sleep 4 hours a night." "That's not what I'm saying." "I clean her accidents." "Emily." "I wipe her body. I change her sheets. I canceled my life for this family." His expression hardened immediately at the word canceled. "Nobody forced you." There it was. The third wound. Not gratitude. Revision. They had started rewriting history already. "You begged me to do this." Ryan shrugged. "You could have said no." That sentence stayed in the room after he left. "You could have said no." I repeated it silently while washing dishes, while changing Grandma's sheets, while setting alarms for medication. You could have said no. Technically true. Emotionally monstrous. That night, Grandma couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., she called softly for me. I sat beside her bed while cicadas screamed outside through the summer darkness. "What's wrong?" I asked. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said something that changed everything. "I need to know exactly how often they come." I frowned. "What?" "Your mother, Ryan, Melissa. I want dates." "Why?" "Because memory fades," she whispered, "but patterns don't." The next morning, she handed me a fresh spiral notebook, blue cover, College ruled. "Write everything down," she said. "Grandma, everything." Visits, phone calls, missed promises, money, conversations, all of it. I stared at the notebook in my hands. Why? Her pale blue eyes locked onto mine. "Because someday they're going to pretend they loved me better than you did." And for the first time since the stroke, I realized she already knew exactly who her family really was. The next morning, she handed me a fresh spiral notebook. Blue cover. College ruled. "Write everything down," she said. "Grandma, everything." Visits, phone calls, missed promises, money, conversations, all of it. I stared at the notebook in my hands. Why? Her pale blue eyes locked onto mine. "Because someday they're going to pretend they loved me better than you did." And for the first time since the stroke, I realized she already knew exactly who her family really was. September 2020 started with smoke-colored skies from wildfires drifting across the country and ended with me crying in a Walgreens parking lot because my debit card declined buying adult wipes and Ensure shakes. The total had been $87.43. I had $41 left in checking. The cashier, a teenage boy with acne and tired eyes, looked uncomfortable when the machine beeped red. "Do you want to try another card?" Behind me, a woman sighed loudly. I could feel people staring. The wipes sat in white plastic bags near the register like evidence. I transferred money from savings while pretending my hands weren't shaking. That night, Ryan posted photos from a lake house weekend in Michigan. Boat rentals, steaks on a grill, Melissa in oversized sunglasses holding wine. Caption: "Needed this getaway so bad." I stared at the screen while Grandma slept beside the humming oxygen machine. Then I opened the notebook. September 18th, 2020. Could not afford supplies today without transferring emergency savings. Ryan posted vacation photos same day. No one asked if we needed anything. I stopped calling it journaling after that. It became documentation. Mom called less frequently once she realized Grandma's memory was inconsistent. Not gone, just inconsistent enough that conversations could be denied later. One afternoon in October, I overheard her in the hallway outside Grandma's room. "She doesn't remember half the time anyway," Mom whispered into her phone. I stepped out so suddenly she nearly dropped it. Her face changed instantly. That fake softness again. "Oh, good, you're awake." Grandma wasn't asleep. Neither was I. "You think she can't tell what's happening?" I asked. Mom crossed her arms immediately. "You're getting paranoid." "No, I'm paying attention." "You've become very hostile since moving here." The accusation stunned me. Hostile. As if exhaustion itself had become a personality flaw. Grandma spoke from the recliner quietly. "Diane." Mom turned. Grandma's voice was weak now, but sharp enough to cut glass. "If Emily left for 1 week, you wouldn't survive this house." Silence. Mom grabbed her purse 20 minutes later and left without saying goodbye. That night, Grandma asked me to bring her the blue notebook. Not mine. Hers. I had seen her writing in it for months, but never opened it. She flipped slowly through pages filled with shaky handwriting. Dates, times, names. Then she handed it to me. Read. October 11th, 2020. Diane visited 22 minutes. Complained about traffic 4 times. Did not ask Emily how she's sleeping. Another entry, November 2nd, 2020. Ryan arrived wearing $300 sneakers. Emily's coat zipper broken. He noticed, said nothing. Another, December 24th, 2020. Emily wrapped all gifts after Margaret asleep because hands hurt too badly to help. Fell asleep sitting upright on couch at 1:13 a.m. Still woke up at 6 to prepare breakfast. I looked up slowly. You've been tracking everything. Grandma nodded once. They count money, she whispered. I count effort. That Christmas broke something inside me permanently. Ryan and Melissa arrived late again. The kids barely acknowledged Grandma before disappearing into the guest room with iPads. Melissa brought store-bought cookies still inside plastic containers from Kroger, but accepted compliments like she baked them herself. Mom wore a cream wool coat that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I cooked everything. Again. Turkey, ham, casseroles, pie. At one point, while I was carrying gravy into the dining room, I heard Melissa speaking softly to Mom near the kitchen island. She's too attached to this caregiver identity now. I stopped walking. She doesn't even realize she's wasting her best years. Mom sighed dramatically. Well, some women need to feel needed. Needed. Not loved. Not respected. Useful. That was how they saw me. Useful. Grandma noticed my face at dinner. What happened? She asked quietly. Nothing. But she knew I was lying. After everyone left, she asked me to wheel her into the kitchen. The clock above the microwave read 11:48 p.m. Dirty dishes covered every surface. My feet hurt so badly I could barely stand. Grandma looked around slowly. Who cleaned up after Christmas when you were little? She asked. You did. And who's doing it now? I swallowed hard. I am. She nodded faintly. Funny how invisible work stays invisible until nobody does it anymore. COVID winter hit hard. January through March 2021 blurred into isolation, medications, and exhaustion. Grandma's mobility worsened. Twice I had to help lift her from the bathroom floor after her legs gave out. The second time, I injured my shoulder catching her before her head hit the sink. I didn't go to the doctor. Couldn't leave her alone long enough. I wore a heating patch under my sweatshirt for 2 weeks instead. Ryan called during one of those nights while I was changing Grandma's sheets at 2 a.m. You sound tired, he said casually. I laughed once. You think? Well, nobody told you to become a martyr. That word sat inside my chest like broken glass. Martyr. Not daughter. Not caregiver. Not sacrifice. Martyr. I looked at Grandma sleeping weakly under dim lamplight. You know what's funny? I asked quietly. What? You all talk like this happened to you. He got defensive instantly. That's not fair. No, I said. None of this is fair. Then I hung up. First time I had ever hung up on my brother. I shook afterward. Not from fear. From realizing how long I had trained myself to accept disrespect just to keep peace alive. In April 2021, Grandma had another stroke. Smaller, but crueler. It stole language more than movement. After that, words came slowly, painfully, sometimes not at all. The neurologist, a tired man with silver glasses named Dr. Levin, pulled me aside afterward. You need help. I almost laughed. From who? He looked at me carefully, then didn't answer. Because we both knew. Nobody was coming. That spring, Grandma started sleeping more, talking less, watching me constantly. like she was memorizing me before leaving. One afternoon in May, I sat brushing her hair near the living room window while rain rolled softly down the glass. "You know what I regret," she whispered suddenly. "What?" "Raising your mother to believe love means convenience." I froze. Grandma closed her eyes tiredly. "I made her too comfortable." I didn't know what to say. She squeezed my wrist weakly. "But not you." That same week, I overheard Mom and Ryan arguing in the driveway. Not about Grandma, about money. Ryan's business had debt. Melissa wanted renovations. Mom's retirement account had dropped during COVID. And suddenly the house came up again. Always the house. "You said Margaret promised equal split," Ryan hissed. "She did before Emily moved in. What if she changes it?" Mom lowered her voice. "She won't." But she sounded uncertain for the first time. That night, Grandma asked for the notebook again. "Write this down," she whispered. I uncapped the pen. Ryan asked about the house before asking about my health. I wrote every word carefully. Then she added something else. "If people show you who they are repeatedly, believe the repetition." Summer 2021 became the hardest year yet. Grandma lost bowel control completely. The first time it happened, she cried so hard she couldn't breathe properly. "I'm sorry," she kept repeating. I cleaned her gently while pretending not to notice my own tears. "You changed my diapers once," I whispered. "Now it's my turn." "No," she said weakly. "Children leave eventually. You stayed." That sentence nearly destroyed me, because she said it like staying had cost me something enormous. And she was right. One night in August, after 40 straight hours with almost no sleep because Grandma had severe confusion episodes, I fell asleep sitting upright beside her bed. I woke at 4:12 a.m. with a blanket over my shoulders. Grandma was awake, watching me. "You look old," she whispered sadly. I was 31. But she was right. Caregiving had aged me in ways mirrors couldn't fully show. The dark circles, the permanent tension around my mouth, the way joy startled me now instead of arriving naturally. In October 2021, Melissa cornered me in the kitchen during another family dinner. She lowered her voice while everyone else watched football in the living room. "You know eventually you'll have to rebuild your life, right?" I kept drawing dishes. "I know. You can't stay emotionally dependent on Margaret forever." Emotionally dependent. The irony almost made me laugh. I turned slowly toward her. "I gave up my career." Melissa shrugged lightly. "That was your choice." There it was again. That rewriting. That disgusting little revision they all used to erase guilt. As if sacrifice volunteered under pressure somehow stopped being sacrifice. "You know what?" I said quietly. "What?" "You all keep saying I chose this. But none of you ever offered to trade places with me." Melissa's expression hardened instantly. "That's unfair." "No," I said. "Unfair is watching someone drown while criticizing how they swim." For once, she had no response. That winter, Grandma started hiding documents. I noticed because folders kept appearing in strange places. Inside cookbooks, under couch cushions, inside the linen closet. Bank papers, insurance forms, property records. One evening I found her studying the house deed with trembling hands. "What are you doing?" She looked up calmly. "Fixing a mistake." I frowned. "What mistake?" "Thinking blood automatically means loyalty." Then she folded the deed carefully and slid it back into the envelope. And for the first time, a terrifying thought entered my mind. Grandma knew exactly what she was going to do. And somewhere deep down, Mom knew too. By February 2022, the house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a waiting room. Not for recovery, for death. The oxygen machine hummed day and night now, a constant mechanical breathing sound underneath everything else. Underneath the weather reports, underneath the television, underneath my own thoughts. Grandma barely walked anymore. Most mornings began with medication crushed into vanilla pudding and ended with me asleep in the recliner beside her hospital bed, one hand still hanging over the rail because somewhere during the night she had reached for me again. Outside, life kept moving. Neighbors replaced roofs. Kids rode bikes down Linden Avenue. Amazon drivers dropped packages on porches. Meanwhile, time inside our house had become sticky and strange, like the clocks themselves were tired. Mom visited less, Ryan even less than that. But every time they did come over, they looked at the house before they looked at Grandma. That was the part I never forgot. Their eyes always scanned the kitchen renovations Grandpa finished in 2008. The hardwood floors, the built-in cabinets, the backyard. Inventory. Not memories. Inventory. One Sunday afternoon in March, Ryan arrived alone, carrying coffee from Starbucks. Not for me, just for himself. He stood near the kitchen counter while I adjusted Grandma's blankets. "She looks worse," he said quietly. I stared at him. Not because the statement was cruel, because of how emotionally empty it sounded. Like he was commenting on weather damage. "She had another TIA last week," I said. Ryan nodded slowly, then after maybe 10 seconds of silence. "So has Mom talked to you about what happens after?" There it was. Not if. After. I kept folding laundry. What happens after what? He shoved one hand into his pocket. The house, finances, stuff. Stuff. 5 years of sacrifice reduced to stuff. I looked toward Grandma. Her eyes were closed, but I knew she wasn't sleeping. "She's still alive," I said quietly. Ryan sighed. "You always do this." "Do what?" "Make everything emotional." I actually laughed. A sharp, exhausted sound. "You're discussing a living woman like she's an estate sale." "That's not fair." "No," I said. "Fair would have been helping." He left 20 minutes later after taking 2 unopened Diet Cokes from the garage fridge. Didn't say goodbye to Grandma. That night, she asked me for the notebook again. Her hands shook too badly to hold the pen consistently now, so I wrote while she spoke. March 14th, 2022. Ryan visited 21 minutes. Asked about house within first 4 minutes. Did not touch Margaret once. Then she paused. Her breathing rattled softly in her chest. "Write this too," she whispered. I waited. Emily still thinks love means service. Ryan thinks love means inheritance. I wrote it exactly. Spring became summer. Summer became fall. The years started collapsing together after that. Medication, laundry, doctor appointments, emergency scares, tiny moments of hope, followed by harder declines. I stopped posting online entirely, stopped answering texts. Friends slowly disappeared because I canceled too many times. The truth nobody says out loud about caregiving is this. Eventually, your world shrinks to the size of another person's suffering. And if you stay long enough, you start disappearing inside it. By January 2023, Grandma needed help eating. By April, she forgot certain words entirely. But strangely, her emotional memory stayed perfect. She remembered who stayed, who rushed, who looked annoyed, who checked their phones while she spoke, who cleaned her gently, who sighed while lifting her. The body forgets differently than the heart. One rainy evening in June, while I spoon-fed her tomato soup in the living room, she suddenly asked, "Do you know why your grandfather trusted me with money?" I smiled faintly. "Because you scared banks." A weak laugh escaped her. Then she became serious again. "No. Because I noticed details." She pointed weakly toward the hallway. "Your mother only visits after hair appointments." I blinked. "What?" "She comes here when she already feels pretty." I almost laughed again, then realized Grandma was right. Every visit, perfect makeup, styled hair, matching jewelry, never rushed, never disheveled, never looking like someone carrying responsibility. Meanwhile, I hadn't had a haircut in 11 months. Grandma looked at me carefully. "People reveal priorities accidentally." That sentence stayed with me. In September 2023, Melissa made the mistake that destroyed everything. Family dinner, pot roast, mashed potatoes, football playing softly from the living room. Grandma was quieter than usual that night, drifting in and out while we ate. Melissa sipped wine and glanced around the dining room casually. "You know," she said, "the market's actually incredible right now for houses in this area." Mom immediately got tense. "Melissa, what? I'm just saying." Ryan avoided eye contact. Melissa continued anyway. "This place could easily go over asking if updated properly." I sat frozen. Grandma slowly lowered her fork. Melissa smiled at her brightly. "Not that anyone wants to think about stressful things right now." There it was again. That fake sweetness hiding greed underneath. Grandma stared at her for a very long time. Then she asked quietly, "How much money would make my death feel convenient for you?" The room went completely silent. Melissa's face drained instantly. "That's not what I meant." "Yes, it is." Her voice was weak now, but terrifyingly clear. Ryan stood quickly. "Okay, nobody's saying that you all started measuring this house before I even lost use of my legs." Mom whispered harshly, "Margaret, stop." But Grandma kept going. "You know the difference between Emily and the rest of you?" Nobody answered. "She stayed long enough to stop counting what it cost her." I couldn't breathe. Mom looked furious now, embarrassed, exposed. Grandma pushed her plate away. "I'm tired," she whispered. I wheeled her into the living room while the others stayed frozen at the table. As I adjusted her blanket, she caught my wrist suddenly. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "call Nathan Cooper." "Who?" "My lawyer." I stared at her. "You have a lawyer?" A tiny, tired smile touched her face. "I'm old, Emily. Not stupid." The next morning, I found his business card inside the blue notebook. Nathan Cooper, estate attorney, downtown Columbus. I called at 9:14 a.m. By Thursday, he arrived at the house. Gray suit, quiet voice, sharp eyes. He spent 2 hours alone with Grandma in the living room, while I waited in the kitchen hearing low murmurs and papers sliding across the table. At one point, Grandma laughed softly. First real laugh in months. When he left, he shook my hand firmly. "Your grandmother is remarkable," he said. Then he looked directly at me. "And very thorough." I didn't understand what that meant. Not yet. October hit hard. Grandma deteriorated quickly after that. Sleeping more, eating less, talking in fragments. Hospice equipment arrived. Hospital bed, portable oxygen, disposable gloves stacked beside the sink. The house smelled permanently like antiseptic and lavender lotion. Mom started visiting more frequently then. Not because Grandma improved, because she was dying. One evening, I walked back into the kitchen unexpectedly and heard Mom whispering to Ryan, "We need to make sure Emily doesn't manipulate her at the end." Ryan nodded immediately. "She's emotionally unstable right now." Emotionally unstable. I hadn't slept more than 4 uninterrupted hours in years. I had cleaned their mother's body while they renovated kitchens and took vacations, and somehow I was the unstable one. That night I cried silently in the shower so Grandma wouldn't hear. Not loud crying, just exhausted, leaking tears mixed with steam and shampoo water. I barely recognized myself anymore, but Grandma noticed everything. 2 days later, she whispered, "They're scared." Of what? That I saw them clearly before I died. November 11th, 2023, 2:16 a.m. I woke to the sound of Grandma struggling to breathe. Different this time. Wet. Shallow. Wrong. The hospice nurse came within 20 minutes. Rachel, mid-40s, calm eyes. The kind of woman who knew how to speak softly around death. She checked Grandma carefully, then pulled me aside into the kitchen. "It's close." I stared at her. "How close?" Rachel glanced toward the living room. Days, maybe hours. My knees nearly gave out. I hadn't prepared for the reality somehow, even after all this time. I called Mom first, then Ryan. Both said the exact same thing. "Keep us updated." Neither came immediately. Of course they didn't. I stayed beside Grandma all night, holding her hand, reading softly from an old gardening magazine because familiar voices comfort dying people sometimes. At sunrise, she opened her eyes fully for the first time in almost 2 days. "Emily." I leaned closer immediately. "I'm here." "Blue notebook." I grabbed it from the side table. "No," she whispered weakly. "The other one." There was another notebook hidden beneath the drawer. Black leather. Inside were documents, property records, bank information, insurance policies, and one sealed envelope with my name written carefully across the front. Emily. My hands started shaking. "Grandma?" She squeezed my fingers weakly. "After." Tears blurred my vision. "You don't have to worry about any of that right now." "Yes," she whispered. "I do." Then, very softly, "I saw you." Those were the last fully clear words she ever spoke to me. She died 36 hours later. Rain fell the entire morning. Soft, steady November rain against the windows while the oxygen machine finally went silent. Rachel confirmed the time calmly. 11:42 a.m. Mom arrived 23 minutes later. Ryan 40 minutes after that. Melissa cried loudly almost immediately. Too loudly. The kind of crying people perform when other people are watching. Meanwhile, I sat on the living room floor beside Grandma's empty bed, unable to feel my hands. 5 years. Gone in one breath. The funeral happened 4 days later, and somehow they turned even grief into theater. Ryan gave a speech about family devotion. Mom cried elegantly into tissues. Melissa posted black and white photos online with captions about losing the heart of the family. Not one of them mentioned who actually cared for her. Not once. Then came the will reading. Downtown office, cold rain, mahogany table. Exactly $1 left to me publicly. Ryan laughed. Melissa smirked. Mom looked relieved. And then Nathan Cooper opened the second folder. The room changed instantly. The house had already been transferred 18 months earlier. The savings, too. Insurance policies, investment accounts, everything. All legally documented. All irrevocable. All mine. But that wasn't the part that destroyed them. The notebooks did. Nathan Cooper placed all 7 notebooks onto the table carefully. Blue, black, labeled by year. Grandma had documented everything. Every missed visit, every cruel comment, every manipulation, every excuse. Every time they asked about property before asking about her health. Mom went pale reading the pages. Ryan started sweating. Melissa stopped speaking entirely. Then Nathan read the final entry aloud. November 9th, 2023. If my family contests Emily after my death, let this stand as my final statement. Love without labor is performance. Emily carried this family alone while the rest protected their comfort. If anyone deserves this home, it is the person who gave up her life inside it. Silence filled the room. Heavy, humiliating silence. Mom finally whispered, "She manipulated you." Nathan Cooper calmly slid another document across the table. Neurological competency evaluation. Grandma had passed fully. Twice. Ryan looked at me desperately then. "We're family." I stared at him. "No," I said quietly. "I was family. You were spectators." And for the first time in 5 years, I stood up and walked away first. Not them. Me. 3 months later, Mom tried contesting the estate. Failed. The notebooks became public court evidence. Extended family stopped speaking to Ryan entirely after reading excerpts. Melissa deleted her Facebook for almost a year. And me? The weirdest part was this. Once the chaos ended, I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. Then peaceful, like surviving something underwater for too long. I sold nothing, kept the house exactly as Grandma left it. I returned to veterinary medicine part-time. Started sleeping through nights again slowly. Started buying clothes without guilt. Started remembering I existed outside caregiving. Sometimes I still wake up at 2 a.m. expecting the oxygen machine. Sometimes silence still scares me. But not like before. Last spring, I planted tomatoes in Grandma's backyard. The same garden she used to kneel in every May before arthritis ruined her hands. And while watering them one evening, I realized something quietly devastating. The inheritance was never really the money. It was proof. Proof that somebody saw me correctly before I disappeared completely. Proof that love counted. Proof that staying counted. That invisible labor was still labor. The blue notebooks sit on my office shelf now beside Grandma's old reading glasses. Every once in a while, I open one randomly. And every single time, there's another moment I forgot she noticed. Emily skipped dinner again tonight because Margaret was nauseous. Pretended she wasn't hungry. Emily cried in laundry room where she thought nobody could hear. Emily hasn't bought new shoes in almost 2 years. Emily stayed. That was the thing nobody else understood. Staying is expensive. Not financially, spiritually. It costs pieces of you slowly, and most people will happily let you pay that price while convincing themselves they would have done the same. But they wouldn't have. That's why they laughed when they thought I inherited $1. Because people always mock sacrifices they were too weak to make themselves. The last thing Grandma ever gave me wasn't money. It was clarity. Some people love you only when your suffering benefits them. Some people call exploitation family. Some people confuse convenience with loyalty. And some people, very rare people, see everything quietly. Count everything quietly. Love quietly. Grandma was one of those people. Now I try to be one too. And every time I unlock the front door to the house they thought they'd take from me, I remember her final clear words. I saw you. That was the real inheritance. Not the money, not the house. Being seen.